or peace? Dominate or serve? Rise to the top or keep your integrity? Be feared or be loved? Win the world or keep your soul? These are the burning questions every ambitious soul quietly wrestles with. Whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, leading a movement, or simply trying to navigate a complicated world, it feels like you're constantly being told to choose. Choose between getting ahead or staying true, between powerful or being good. But what if that's a false choice? What if you could be both? Machiavelli, the name alone sounds like a warning. He's often painted as the godfather of manipulation, the cold-blooded strategist who taught tyrants how to rise. The ends justify the means is what people associate with him, and yet that's not the whole truth. Because buried inside Machiavelli's dark advice is something deeper, something smarter, something more practical. He wasn't a cheerleader for cruelty, he was a realist. A man who watched good people lose everything because they didn't understand power, and bad people win because they did. This isn't about becoming a villain. This is about understanding the rules of power so you can protect yourself without becoming what you hate. So you can influence the world without losing your identity. So you can win but still sleep at night. Welcome to Mantis Library. This is where history, philosophy, and brutal truth come together. Let's begin. We've all been told to be good, to do the right thing, to treat people kindly because what goes around comes around. But let's be honest, in real life, sometimes it doesn't. The good guy gets used. The polite coworker gets passed over. The honest friend becomes everyone's emotional dumping ground. Meanwhile, the sly, the loud, the bold seem to rise. It's frustrating, even unfair, and that's exactly the world Machiavelli was talking about. The Prince wasn't written by some evil mastermind. It was a brutally honest survival guide. He wasn't trying to make people worse. He was trying to keep the smart ones from getting crushed. Niccolò Machiavelli watched his city, Florence, fall apart, while well-meaning leaders made bad decisions in the name of virtue. He saw firsthand how people who played nice all the time lost to people who didn't. So he wrote a book for the next ruler, spelling it out. A man who strives to be good all the time will come to ruin among the great number who are not good. That's not a call to be heartless. It's a reminder that not everyone's playing fair. And if you're always sticking to idealism while others are playing dirty, you're going to be eaten alive. It's this paradox that's at the heart of his message. Being good in a bad world can lead to bad outcomes. It's not that kindness doesn't matter. It does. But if you don't strategically apply it, it won't protect you. Machiavelli wanted leaders to see that virtue and power don't always walk hand in hand. If you're blind to how power works, even your good intentions can backfire. That's why he famously said, "It's better to be feared than loved," if you cannot be both. Because being feared ensures survival. Being loved doesn't. Now, that line gets misused a lot. People quote it as if Machiavelli was some kind of villain coach, training people to be monsters. But that's not what he meant. It wasn't about being cruel. It was about being respected. When people fear consequences, they think twice before crossing you. And here's the thing He didn't say, be feared instead of loved. He said, if you cannot be both. The goal is to have both. But if you have to pick, choose the one that guarantees people won't take advantage of you. Let's take that into modern times. Look at the workplace. There's always someone who's super nice, always says yes, covers for others, never sets boundaries. And what happens? They're overworked, underappreciated, and burnt out. Compare that to someone who's respectful but firm, who says no when they need to, who calls things out directly. They might not be loved, but they're respected. People don't mess with them. That's Machiavellian wisdom right there. Not cruelty, just clarity. But Machiavelli didn't just say, be feared. He also emphasized when and how to use power. One of his most practical principles was the idea of one-time brutality. Basically, if you have to do something harsh, do it decisively, do it once, and move on. Dragging things out only makes people resent you more. That doesn't mean you go around hurting people on purpose. Even Machiavelli said cruelty should only be used when absolutely necessary, and that the ruler should make himself feared in such a way that if he does not win love, he avoids hatred. That balance is everything. You don't want people to hate you. You want them to know you're not to be messed with, but you're also fair. You're not out to get them. You're just not going to let anyone walk over you. So how do you strike that balance? That's where his lion and fox metaphor comes in. Machiavelli said a ruler needs to be both a lion and a fox. One must be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten off wolves. It's one of his most powerful analogies. The lion represents raw strength and boldness. Think setting firm boundaries, making tough calls. The fox represents cleverness, reading the room, adapting, playing the long game. If you're all lion, people see you coming and know how to take you down. If you're all fox, you might be clever, but eventually someone stronger will overpower you. It's about knowing when to switch between the two. And while all this sounds a little intense, it doesn't mean you abandon your humanity. In fact, one of the most practical lessons from Machiavelli is about reputation. He said, everyone sees who you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. In today's world, that's branding. Whether you're a politician, a CEO, or just someone on social media, how people perceive you often matters more than who you really are. It's not that you should fake everything, it's that you should manage what people see. If they believe you're strong, capable, trustworthy, that image protects you. This doesn't mean you become a fraud. It just means you become strategic about your image. Oprah Winfrey built her influence not just by being warm and empathetic, but by controlling the narrative around her. People saw her as wise, relatable, honest, and she lived up to that, sure. But she also made calculated choices to maintain that reputation. That's reputation alchemy. Taking what's true about you, amplifying it, and using it as armor. It's also why Machiavelli warned against being too honest too soon. If you show all your cards, people might use them against you. So you reveal your values, yes, but you time it. You choose your moments. He even said, a prince must learn how not to be good and to use this knowledge or not according to the necessity of the case. It sounds shady, but it's more like knowing when to speak up and when to stay quiet, when to fight and when to walk away. It's emotional intelligence with a realist's edge. Think about how this applies to your life. Let's say you're in a toxic work culture. If you walk in every day wearing your heart on your sleeve, you'll be eaten alive. But if you stay silent forever, you'll lose your own voice. So what do? You read the room. You become the fox. You find allies. You build quiet influence. And when the moment comes, you strike like a lion, firm, clear, unapologetic, not out of rage, but out of strategy. That's Machiavellian, but in the best way. And here's where people get it twisted. Machiavelli never said, lie all the time, or be evil. He actually said it's best to be good if you can. So far as he is able, a prince should stick to the path of good, but when necessity arises, he should know how to take the path of evil. That's the heart of it. You try to be good, you try to lead with kindness, but when life throws chaos your way, you adapt. You don't crumble because the world isn't fair, you adjust your grip. You find the smartest path forward, even if it's not the prettiest. And that's where this whole thing ties together. You're not choosing between being a good person or a successful one. You're choosing to be both, but wisely, with strategy, with awareness, with the ability to shift gears. Because in a world full of traps and wolves, being good with no defenses isn't noble, it's naive. And Machiavelli, he didn't want you to be naive. He wanted you to survive, to lead, to win, and maybe even do some good while you're at it. Next up, let's talk about the traps, the slippery kind. This is where Machiavellian thought often gets twisted, misused, or straight up misunderstood. And honestly, it's not just in politics or in some high-stakes corner office drama. These patterns show up in everyday life too. From group projects to boardrooms to friendships. It's easier than we think to slip into these traps, thinking we're being smart or tactical, when we're really just sabotaging ourselves long term. The first trap is probably the most popular and the most dangerous. The ends justify the means. You've heard it 1,000 times, sometimes from someone trying to get out of doing something shady. Now here's the thing. Machiavelli never exactly said that. It's one of the most misquoted and misunderstood ideas associated with him. What he actually laid out was more nuanced. Sometimes, yes, you may have to get your hands dirty in order to protect something bigger, but that doesn't mean any method goes. And yet, the simplified version gets thrown around like a free sample at the mall. Studies have shown that people who engage in repeated, unethical behavior, lying, cheating, manipulating, actually experience changes in their brain's moral processing centers. At first, these little acts feel wrong, but over time, the discomfort fades. The more you do it, the easier it gets, and suddenly, you're not being strategic, you're just being numb. The path to power shouldn't cost you your conscience or your brain chemistry. Now that leads us into the second trap, permanent cynicism. This one is sneakier because at first glance, it feels like wisdom, like you've seen too much of the world to believe in fairy tales. But Machiavelli himself warned against going full robot. He wrote, "Hatred is gained as much by good works as by evil," meaning no matter what you do, kind or cruel, someone will hate you for it. So don't get bitter. Don't swing so far toward distrust that you forget what it's like to believe in something real. That's where something called strategic idealism comes in. Basically, have ideals, but be smart about how and when you use them. Bill Gates is a classic case. He went from cutthroat tech mogul to global healthcare advocate. And he didn't just throw money at problems. He built systems, influenced policies, and still plays the game. People might debate his methods, but his power now comes from visible idealism. He's not hiding behind it, he's leveraging it. There's a difference. Now, the last trap, the scariest one, is power addiction. That feeling of being untouchable, that little voice that says, "You're the exception, you're too smart to fall." Machiavelli had a whole concept for this. Fortuna, the unpredictable, shifting tides of life. No matter how clever you are, there are forces outside your control. Luck, timing, chaos. He wrote about how rulers rise and fall, based not just on skill, but on how well they adapt to change. And yet so many leaders fall into the exact opposite mindset. According to one study, 78% of powerful figures who lost everything did so because they misjudged their own stability. They thought they had it locked. They believed they earned immunity. Spoiler, no one is immune. Whether it's a CEO who refuses to pivot, a politician who clings to old strategies, or a social media influencer who stops listening to their audience, the crash comes when you stop evolving. That's why some of the wisest historical leaders had something like a power detox. They'd step back, delegate, or retreat when necessary, not because they were weak, but because they understood the limits of control. And honestly, this doesn't just apply to world leaders. Look at how people cling to status in smaller ways. Office hierarchies, social groups, even online clout. Ever seen someone completely spiral because they lost followers or weren't invited to something? That's power addiction too, and it's exhausting. Sometimes the best move for long-term influence is to let go of needing to be in control every second. Because influence isn't about dominance, it's about resilience. Now we come to the part that Machiavelli never really spelled out, but definitely lived by. It's the hidden layer beneath all his political strategy, the stuff that doesn't get quoted on X or embroidered on toxic hustle culture hoodies. It matters more than any tactic, because once you understand power, once you've seen how fragile and addictive it can be, the next step isn't how to win more. Let's start with the red line system. Think of it as Machiavelli's unspoken never betray list. While The Prince makes it sound like anything goes if you're trying to survive, his other writings, especially Discourses on Livy, reveal that he did believe in limits. He just didn't wave them around. He knew that some actions poison your credibility so deeply that no amount of success can undo the damage. This isn't about perfection, it's about deciding now which values you won't violate, no matter how tempting the shortcut. Your red lines are your boundaries with yourself. If you don't draw them early, you'll only find out where they were when you've already crossed them. But even if you set red lines, they only work if you check yourself regularly. That's where the mirror test comes in. Back in the day, the rulers of Venice, the doges, used to undergo regular public audits, not just of their finances, but of their conduct. Imagine that. You run a government, and once a year, your neighbors get to review your vibe. That sounds terrifying, but it's kind of brilliant. You're forced to reflect. You're forced to ask, did I actually live the way I claimed to? In our world, we need a personal version of that. A simple daily practice of asking, did I make anyone feel small today just to feel big? Did I keep my promises, even the small ones? Did I like who I was when no one was watching? These aren't diary prompts for emotional drama. They're maintenance checks for your soul. And if you're thinking, okay, but what if I already messed up? Good news, your brain can bounce back. Psychology calls it cognitive dissonance reduction. When our actions don't line up with our values, we feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is actually useful. It's your brain waving a little red flag, saying, hey, you're off track. The goal isn't to eliminate that feeling, it's to listen to it. Real integrity isn't about being flawless. It's about noticing the cracks and repairing them before the whole structure falls. But even when you've got red lines and a decent mirror routine, there's still the problem of time. It's easy to justify a choice because it feels right now. But what about later? That's where the legacy calculus comes in. In Discourses on Livy, Machiavelli hints at it when he writes about how wise leaders think generationally. They don't just ask, what will this do for me today? They ask, how will this shape things in 5 years, 50 years? This sounds lofty, but let's break it down. Whenever you're stuck on a big decision, try asking yourself 3 versions of the same question. What does this decision get me in the short term? How will I feel about it in 5 years? And what would my great-grandkid think if they read about it in a book someday? The further out you zoom, the more honest you get, because short-term wins often come with long-term wreckage. But if something holds up across 3 frames, chances are it's solid. Okay, now we've built all this up. Let's talk about what it means for regular people. Like, not princes, not billionaires, just us, trying to survive work, relationships, and whatever fresh chaos adulthood decides to serve on a Tuesday. In the workplace, power games are everywhere. Office politics isn't just a sitcom trope, it's real. But here's the key. You don't have to play dirty to play smart. The trick is knowing when to engage and when to let go. You don't have to be the loudest voice in the meeting to be influential. Sometimes managing up, as in influencing your boss, is less about flattery and more about making their life easier. Anticipate problems, bring solutions, and align your wins with theirs. That's not manipulation, that's strategy with a soul. In relationships, whether it's parenting or partnerships, the idea of healthy Machiavellianism sounds weird, but it's just realism with empathy. You don't need boundaries, you just need to think ahead. But you also need kindness to be the baseline. One smart therapist once said, say yes with love, say no with respect. That's it. That's the playbook. Influence works best when the other person knows you're not out to control them. You're just trying to build something with them. And then there's self-leadership. Machiavelli's concept of virtue wasn't about morality, it was about excellence. Your unique ability to shape your own fate. He believed people who develop their virtue can navigate chaos better than those who wait for luck to save them. And yeah, the guy had an actual exercise routine for the mind. He'd read history obsessively, write at night in full formal clothes, even when broke, and debate with dead philosophers in his head. He was training for mental toughness like it was a sport. You don't have to get that intense, but doing even one thing daily that sharpens your mind is a kind of power training. And that brings us to the real conclusion. Machiavelli's biggest lesson wasn't be ruthless, it was be awake. Don't just drift through life reacting. Make conscious choices. There's a big difference between unthinking idealism that gets steamrollered and thoughtful pragmatism that builds something real. And there's also a huge, dangerous difference between strategic thinking and soulless manipulation that leaves you empty. He gave us one final warning in The Prince, one that's rarely quoted but wildly important. The conqueror must arrange to commit all his cruelties at once. Benefits must be granted little by little. Translation: if you have to do something hard, do it fast and clean. But when you're building something good, go slow, earn trust, let people feel it gradually. Because kindness done right has more staying power than fear ever will. That's the tightrope, knowing when to be hard, when to be soft, and most importantly, when to walk away from the game entirely. Not because you couldn't win, but because you finally realized the game wasn't worth your soul. And if you liked this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious, stay mindful, and never stop exploring. We'll see you again in Mantis Library.